Getting ready to live stream here in just a second. It's loading.
Good morning.
Friday the 13th. Are we really gonna miss out on the chance to put on a hockey mask? When do we say Friday the 13th?
Good morning, everybody. We are live.
You didn't think about it right.
Kevin, can you? We're getting a lot of thank you. We hear the kiddos in the background.
Okay, we ready?
Everyone good?
Okay.
Good.
Let's call to order the February 5th North Gateway Redevelopment Advisory Board meeting. We'll start with a roll call.
I can do it. Yeah. Jared Martin.
Here.
Deacon Lucas. Excused. Nate Levin.
Here.
Mike Alley.
Here.
Scott Cantawine. Excused. Dana Castano.
Here.
And Kevin Moss.
Here.
Excellent. Can I get approval, motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do you have a second?
I
second the agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Say nay. Agenda approved. I'll put a motion to approve the minutes from the October meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Say nay. Minutes approved. No public comment. Action items. We're gonna do an election. I would like to stay chair. If someone would nominate me, I'd appreciate it.
I'll make a nomination that you continue as chair.
We have a second.
Second.
All approved, say aye.
Hey, let me do one caveat to the board.
Oh.
So as then they can vote. I just need to make sure I say this to the
Yeah,
board. Yeah. Sharon. So as you guys know, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, this board is sort of in this going to be in a weird transition as we stop collecting increment and things like that. So one of the things is, and as a lot of you know, we haven't added a lot of new members to the board because we know we're about to sort of go through this phasing out process. So the one thing I just need to mention so that we're like dotting our I's and crossing our T's, technically Jared has turned off. He can still be elected chair. If his position were to be replaced, we would just need to elect a new chair or the vice chair would take over. I don't foresee that happening, but I do need to make sure that everybody knows that. So now you can continue.
Okay. All in favor of me staying chair, say aye.
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 Let's say nay. Approved. Vice chair, Deacon couldn't be here, he had a doctor's appointment, but he would like to stay vice chair. So I would nominate him. Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Deacon's vice chair. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I know
Yeah,
that was
thank you.
wonky.
So I'm trying to keep us moving because get a little bit of a late start. Budget talks.
Yes, so I will go over the budget. We'll do high level, so hopefully everybody got everything. I tried to get it out a little bit earlier than the packets, just to make sure everybody had plenty of time to review. So everyone knows I did not receive any outside questions from any board members, so there's nothing to share in that respect. But I did want to go over a few things to note. So in your packets, it's the fun looking spread. You can't see this, but it's the spreadsheet with the numbers, is what I'm looking at. And then, so just kind of working sort of top to bottom, as we walk through it. One of the things you're gonna note, especially under resources on the second line item, you see du jour proceeds. That's basically our tax increment. So every year we would typically see, like you see for this year, estimated FY 2026 actuals, there's 4.2 million. there's nothing there because we have hit maximum indebtedness this year. So we're expecting, now we don't actually do our du jours until March, tied to when property taxes come in and things. So there could always be a chance that maybe we only get, 3.8 or 3.7, and then there's a couple extra 100,000 that we're still able to collect next year. But realistically, we most likely won't. So that's one of the big things I just kind of wanted to point out, because du jours, tax increment are the same, but they're not the same. And the more we talk about the fact that we're not collecting anymore, I just wanted to make sure I kind of pointed that out, because that is a big difference this year, in terms of what you see on resources. With that being said, that means what we have is what we have. Unlike back in 2018, when we were able to go through a process and increase that and over time collect about 21 million more, we will spend this until, it's gone, and then at that point, we would officially close the urban renewal area. That won't happen probably for quite some time, even if we do kind of work through this, how the board's still engaged and how we move things forward. Because of the fact that sometimes we may have, a little bit of money that's still there, and so if things come up, we can still kind of assist. That's how, we had a URA at Pringle Creek that stayed open for quite some time, kind of in that same respect. And Fairview urban renewal, for those who might be familiar, kind of in our more industrial area, that's one where we've had a small amount of money, and so we've been able to sort of continue doing some grants and some industrial site work using those funds. So, continuing to help, but not on the same larger scale. So, as we talk through budgets, the future and projects, I'll always be keeping an eye on sort of what that number is and how that aligns with the priorities that were set by this board back in 2019. Any questions about that before I go into the projects? Yeah. So the first couple line items, project coordination support and indirect cost allocation plan, we don't really have any control over that. That's sort of set by finance and a whole bunch of different numbers and matrices and things of that nature. Where we start to come into play is the third item down, which is our capital grant program. As you all might recall, last year we merged 3 of our grant programs kind of back all into one. So that amount was definitely, a lot higher last year at like 2.7. So right now we're showing we've got about 2.1 still available. We do have a couple apps in the queue, so realistically that might be even closer to like 1.8-ish available. But based on how they come in, and we have a $300,000 max, as staff, we're not recommending putting new money into that. But most likely next year, we'll start to have that conversation about like, hey, we probably want to put more money into it. And that's where we start to look at kind of the laundry list of like, okay, it's gonna come from somewhere that we kind of like said, oh, well, we might want to do this or we might want to do that. Because the new grant funds we've kind of gone. We didn't allocate, certain funds in the future projects. It was just as we were putting together our MI plan, we kind of had this, this is kind of what makes sense. And so we'll just start pulling from those, because I think, board's had a great conversation about it. We've heard it, Jared's heard it, the grant program is huge. That's really how we can help people on a more broad scale. So being able to maintain that is something that, as staff, we're gonna make sure that we bring options to the board moving forward to keep that going, as long as we can. So we've got 2.1 in that. Under that one, we've got the Portland Road Bicycle Ped Path. I mentioned this last year. That's a design piece that was put in several years back. I am hoping that we're gonna start to align that with something. This could very well tie into our site industrial readiness that we have in the budget, which is some of you might recall, we're starting the process of looking into what improvements we might be able to do in sort of the Hyacinth Salem Industrial Drive area. There's those properties out there that have a lot of infrastructure needs in order to develop. And it might be one of our last chances to kind of get that sector moving. So Dana, the funds would come technically from unallocated. So they're not coming out of an existing project, but what we did in 2019, and it's a requirement by the state, if you go through sort of this increasing your maximum indebtedness process, is you have to identify how you think you might spend the funds, so on which projects or what types of projects you might spend it on. Obviously, where we were in 2018, 2019, and where we are in 2026, it's like two different worlds. And so, we have, one of the places that, we've talked about, like, we had some placeholder money that we said was really for like, streetscape enhancements. And that was a set aside because we didn't think we were gonna be able to do the second phase of Portland Road. And so we're like, well, if we put some money in and we kind of call it this, then as people develop, maybe we can help do sidewalks or lighting or things of that nature. So that could be a really great place to pull from. And we have some additional site acquisition funds that we could potentially be able to pull from. But those are items that were never officially put in the budget. So it makes it a little easier. So in the technical term, it's unallocated, but we'll walk through kind of like, here's what we were thinking, and here's kind of the reality of where we are now and what makes sense to everybody. Is kind of how that process would work out. And if we did for some reason reach, like, we needed all $2 million, we would just come back to y'all and say like, hey, can we add money to this fund, and here's where we think it should come from. So we always have that option throughout the year. We've done that with this board a couple of times where we were just running out of money constantly, so I just bring that to the board and ask to add money and come up with a proposed place for them. So if we did run through 2 million, we could have that conversation prior to the next budget year too. We can always make changes. That's always something we can do. It's just a staff report. So let's see. So yeah, so the bike ped is a rollover. I think we might be able to lump that in on a larger scale. Derek, who was here for about 2 seconds, is helping me on that right now. So it is something that we're finally kicking off some analysis to get you guys some information. 2640, so that's just additional funds that we might need towards development. That is still moving forward. It's just in the queue with other things, so it's gotten held up a little bit. But at the same time, we do have tenants there. It is still top of mind. It has been shared with, the counselor of that board that we will be wanting to have a conversation with him. It's just a matter of timing with, everything the council has going on right now. And the fact that we still have them involved in 2 other sites and trying to get those agreements kind of finalized first. So it's in the queue, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have those conversations the first part of this year. So that's still coming along. The opportunity fund rebudget, so that was money that we've been using that's kind of associated with that area. We've used it for our rail analysis. We've used it for some additional environmental. So it's really been more for us to do investigation work, whereas the 2 million would be tied to if we were contributing perhaps to a project that was happening there, which is why we rolled it over while we're still figuring it out. If we make decisions and we don't need that, then that would be something that we could look at reallocating towards something different next year. The 17th Street at Silverton Road turn lane. So what you see there is really what's remaining. Once again, no new funds. That project is underway right now. I believe I try whenever we get the larger construction notices to get that out to the board. So 1, you know what's happening. 2, you can share it with your constituents as well. For instance, they closed 17th Street. So that was what I think I sent out to you guys maybe last week or the week before. So that's moving and it should complete this next fiscal year. So that will close out. Right now, we are, cross our fingers and don't hold me to it. We are thinking we're gonna come in under budget on our portion of the project. As you might recall, we're partnering with bond funds and water funds. And so there's multiple projects in one. But our piece is coming in under budget, so there's still change orders and things that can happen. But if that were the case, then any savings I would let you all know, and then that would go into our unallocated to put towards something else. The environmental remediation, we've held that once again because we have that site. But we do have a couple other sites that we own, smaller sites. where that might come into play, where we might wanna, as leases are ending and things of that nature. It's all tied to that Pine Street extension. We actually own a very small sliver that's just on the other side of the railroad that's currently being leased out. That lease is for a couple more years. But it also has some similar environmental issues that we have on 2640. So it could be that we end up needing to do something there. It could be that we end up turning this into maybe more of a grant opportunity as well. So there's a lot of options, but by keeping it there, it kind of keeps that in mind that like, hey, we know there's some environmental things going on, whether it's our side or somebody else's, and kind of gives us some flexibility to do something there. Strategic project grant, so that's just a straight rebudget as well. We didn't expend any funds this last year. That's sort of our safety security 20,000 no match grant. So it's for the exterior cameras, the trash enclosures, exterior fencing. We did have probably 3 or 4 applications come through, and just what they were looking to do didn't match. But we are still getting inquiries all the time. So it has felt like in the last couple of months, things have started to pick up again. And so for that one, we're just recommending let's keep what we have. It feels like that's one where it gets really busy and then it gets really slow, and then it gets really busy and then it gets really slow. And so it's available as there's turnover, as there's needs on properties. But because it's a $20,000 max, I mean, there's plenty to help folks with what's there right now. So the new one you're gonna see is the next one. So the Portland Road infrastructure improvements. The board approved 1.9 towards this last year. So this is phase 2 of what we were able to do 2016 to 2018, 2019. So we did improvements from basically from Bill Fry to Hyacinth. And we did everything from infilling sidewalks, improving lighting, utility relocations. I think we did sewer in that one, if I recall, not water. We did ped crossings and improved that whole corridor. At the same time, we did a complete infrastructure analysis to make sure that all the infrastructure was in place so that as properties in that corridor would look to develop, things would be there so that they wouldn't have to upgrade, or they wouldn't have to connect 6 blocks out and put in a new hydrant or things like that. And so with the bond project, we've been able to partner with them. And last year at this time, we put 1.9 in. The idea of that was to start design work. And it's also enough in there to upgrade the water. And so this is gonna be, technically it's from Beach to basically Hyacinth. Really, it's gonna kind of be like once you go through the underpass. So it's a little bit before Beach is where we're gonna start making improvements all the way to Hyacinth. So we'll be able to do that, finish that whole corridor. The additional 2 million comes from a conversation that I was able to quickly have at the end of the calendar year, kind of November, December, where I posed to our public works engineering team, hey, we've made all these improvements in phase 1. Can we do all of those same improvements or more in phase 2? So that it's really just streamlining that same kind of, look, feel, infrastructure for everybody. They ran all the numbers, and luckily it came in, where they said 2 million would cover that. So that would be similar to what we did before, where we'd be looking at, new infill sidewalks, improving all the lighting, hopefully in that area. We'll be doing utility relocation, so bringing stuff back, opening all of that up so that it's much more, walkable and open. We'll be doing the water lines that we already budgeted in. There's also going to be a new signal light Atlanta that we'll be able to contribute to, so that's going to help with kind of moving traffic through in a safer way, along with getting people through. And so that's, what I had told them is if it was in the 2 million range, we have those funds that we had talked about future set aside for Niles Avenue. As I know, we've all talked about, that was a project where the board had said, the burden really needed to be on public works because it was much more of a public works project. There are no longer any funds for that from public works. Also, it was a project where, from our perspective, we were only gonna be able to help a couple of property owners, where this will be able to do sort of that full corridor. And so the 2 million that's being proposed came from sort of that future bank that we had talked about over the last 18 months. So that's new. And I do have, assuming the board is, we're already doing the water line regardless. But I do have our engineering folks scheduled to come to our April meeting to walk through that project with everybody. And to answer questions and to kind of show what we're thinking that could look like. That would probably be a late 2027 construction schedule right now, I think is what it's looking like. But this would get the money in the queue, so that we can start, going out for bid later into, this calendar year as well. And then committed to future projects, once again, that's just sort of what's still unallocated. We have access to it if something comes up. And one of the things that I will be doing, and I try to do it every year, is based on where we are to date with budget, what we had planned to do. Here now, I'll go through and make sure that with respect to funding, that what's remaining still gets us everything we were hoping to do and still covers some of those admin costs that we can't control. And if for some reason it's starting to look short, I'll make sure that I let the board know that we're gonna have to start taking things off or what that looks like. So that's on my list to do here now that we have some budget projections for next year. After that, we've got that site industrial readiness, so that's kind of looking into the infrastructure needs in that Salem Industrial Drive, Hyacinth area. Depending on what comes out of our initial analysis, there are grant funds through Business Oregon, and so depending, this could be a match for that. Or if we're looking at a very small analysis, then this could cover it. Our first step is actually going through there's been a series of pre-apps over the years, and I think there's a lot of consistency for the variety of infrastructure that's come up that's been needed in that area, minus obviously extending and connecting Hyacinth and Bill Fry, which we don't have the money for, but it doesn't mean that we can't look at the other infrastructure that's needed to maybe help development in that area. So that's our first step, to look at those alignments, and then depending on how many alignments we're seeing between different project types and things like that, then we can have a conversation with our engineering folks and then figure out what exactly do we want to look into. And then that'll determine whether or not we want to go out and try and get a matching grant, or if the 50 will be enough to do that. So once we have that information, we'll be sharing that with the board and kind of getting your feedback on next steps. But then that would go into potential future funds that we had set aside for those Salem Industrial Drive improvements. We thought it would partner maybe with the developer. We're probably looking at maybe, taking a different angle of, we'll look at some infrastructure that maybe will help bring in development instead, which we've done in other ways. And then opportunity purchase, that's once again, that's a carryover that we've had. If there was an opportunity for us to purchase a piece of property to do some type of development, we've maintained holding that in there so that we can move quickly with real estate if need be. It just once again gives us that flexibility. If something were to come up, we don't have to go through the process to get money, and then, we're still having to do executive sessions with council. We can just sort of start those executive sessions right away without having to ask to move money around. So that's where we are with the budget. And that was a lot, and I did it very quickly, so I apologize.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, just a question. Thank you, Sarah, for going through that. We have quite a few open funds, right, or open projects. Would it be possible, maybe for a future meeting, to have you go through and do like a percentage of completion on each of the projects? Doesn't have to be, exactly precise, but maybe say like it's, we're 50% into it or 0. I have a feel like we have a lot of just open ended items, right? You know, and there's a few on there that are more specific, and there's activity being done. But it feels like there's just a number of buckets that, you know, maybe, and not that it's a problem that they're not started, but maybe just if we could have kind of a summary on that for the future, like I say, you know, percentage of completion, that would be helpful, maybe.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. I tried to a certain extent in the attachment that goes over all the MI projects, on each project and kind of the status of where we are, where the money is, what's going on. You know, I think if I walked through them right now, and you are correct, some are kind of placeholders for opportunities. Obviously, capital grant is ongoing. We always get applications. The Portland Road bike ped, that is on hold. You know, we're tying that to the industrial drive stuff to see what's happening there. The 2640, we are waiting, obviously, to have conversations with counselors. The thing I didn't mention, that's also going on with that site, and I've been going back and forth. We are still waiting on DEQ to give us our no further action on that site. So that is something that's going to hold up. We can't, even if we had the blessing, and we can't move forward until we get that NFA. And I've been working with DEQ for 1.5 years to try and get that. I'm working also with the adjacent property owners, attorneys, to try and push DEQ to get that done, because that is a document we would need to have, because no developer is going to want to take it on without an NFA because of the environmental. So that is something that, once again, it doesn't feel like anything's moving, but that's something that's kind of holding things up a little bit. The other thing on that one that is a little complicated, and I'm not sure how it's going to play into things, is the whole reason we bought 2640 was for Pine Street Extension. That's not moving forward. But in our transportation system plan, it still shows Pine Street going through the site. Now that document is under review. It is getting updated. We have had conversations that needs to get pulled out of it. But we could run into an issue where we may not be able to lock in a developer until it shows that it's no longer there. That's something that I need to work through with legal, is if there's any way we can say it's not moving forward. So there's kind of these other things that are also sort of slowing it down just a little bit, and complicating it. The TSP, we were hoping that update was actually gonna start a lot sooner than it did. It is underway now, but once again, due to staffing and other things, it got delayed. The opportunity fund, that is something that's just there as we need it. So that's kind of where that's at. You know, 17 Silverton, you know, we're about halfway-ish on that one. Environmental remediation, again, that's something that's kind of in a hold. Strategic project grant, that's ongoing as people need it. The Portland Road infrastructure project, we're working on design now. Industrial site readiness, like I said, I'm just now getting one of my colleagues to help me on getting that one going, and that is one I will 100% say it's just because I haven't had time to do it. We've had really low staffing here too. We just brought on a second project coordinator, so we have 2 project managers and now 2 project coordinators for all the URAs and all of our act dev work. We lost our assistant director Cherie due to retirement, and so unfortunately, things that I was hoping to focus on, I just haven't personally had the time. So that one I will take full blame on. It hasn't been at the top of my list, but I do now have, I think, a really good team that can help me so that we can start moving that through, because that will then lead to, whether or not we're integrating sort of these bike ped funds, how we're gonna use Salem Industrial, we can start framing up what that's gonna look like. And then opportunity purchase, same thing. That's one of those where it really is there if something comes up, or we can look to reallocate it towards a different project as we're sort of narrowing down our focus. So that's sort of where things are. So I think there's a lot of things moving. There's some, if I could get DEQ to move faster, that would be amazing. We send emails every 2 weeks asking, where are we on the NFA? And, we keep pushing to let people know these programs are out there. But, I think that's a great point you make, Mike, and maybe what I'll try to do is kind of more routine at the meetings, just kind of like, hey, we're making progress here, we're making progress there, versus just sort of having these kind of updates at these meetings.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it would be helpful. I know in our business, with projects, right, we'll set a timeline and then we'll ask that question in, management reviews. Are we 25% in, done, 50%, not down to really granular, but just kind of general buckets like you just verbally gave. That's helpful. And I did see the status report. Thank you for doing that. That was good. You gave a little more color, to each. I'm thinking of something just simple to see that we're making progress on that. And then just the other general comments, it seems like we have a lot of various open buckets, right? And you did a good job explaining it. It's just, I'm just thinking in mind of simplification, but I think it's also good too. I understand there's different reasons why it can't all be in simple buckets, right? There's various reasons why it has to be, but the ones with, just open status, it's a little challenging to gauge progress. So,
sure.
Yeah, but thank you for that. That was good.
It's a great point, and I'll be more mindful of that moving forward for sure.
Right. Thank you.
I think, you just get so used to it. You're just like, yeah, everything's moving. All right.
Looks good to me. Did anybody have any proposed changes?
I don't. Can I ask a quick question? Going back to the whole Pine Street thing. It was a while back, but the sticking point is with the railroad, is it not correct?
Correct.
And the whole idea was just to make like a secondary interchange for people coming off Silverton Road to turn right, or what were we looking to do there? And I guess the question is there any chance that's just going to be totally shelved for good, or is it going to keep trying to press forward?
Oh, it's shelved for good.
It's dead.
Okay. So does that money been reallocated then?
So we had some Pine Street funds, extension funds. Yes, those funds already got reallocated. Those went into Silverton Road.
Okay.
One or two budget cycles ago, is where those went. And you are correct. It was the railroad. This was all kind of happening in conjunction with the third bridge conversation, because it was going to put pressure on Pine Street all the way through. And so that particular property owner was interested in selling in the middle of all those conversations. And so because the city shows a road going through his property, that obviously is going to impact the property value when you go to sell it. And so there was a decision made at the highest level to go ahead and purchase that property, because if the third bridge were to happen and if the railroad were to say yes, and we were to do that extension, it would need to go through the middle of that property. And so all of it was kind of happening simultaneously. The third bridge conversation obviously didn't move forward, but we still move forward on the Pine Street extension because it does make sense in that corridor. But you are 1,000% correct. It did depend on the railroad. One piece to this as well is, as this was happening, the Silverton 17th Street project, we were pushing engineering to start design on. But one of the things that we realized was, if the Pine Street extension were to go through, that would have impacted how we designed Silverton and 17th Street. And so the board was gracious enough to sort of give us a year so that we could work with the railroad to try and figure out if it was even feasible before starting design on 17th and Silverton, because we didn't want to waste all this time and money doing design and then having to redo it. It took us some time. We had conversations with the railroad. The railroad is always willing to say yes. It's just, what are they going to ask for in return?
They wanted a lot.
And it wasn't feasible from a financial standpoint. It also wasn't feasible from a structural standpoint on closures and things that they were asking for. And so at that point, here we are, and we have this property. You're gonna put a road through it. We're not gonna put a road through it. It's kind of an interesting property. It has environmental issues. And so we've kind of just been having to work through it, but because the initial intent was to put a road through it, there's sort of this backstepping we're having to do as well, to get it ready so that we could actually go out for any type of development on the site. And so that's what we're trying to do.
So in terms of we're just gonna continue, the city will continue to maintain ownership of the property in the event that like now a third bridge project would need to utilize it? Or?
No, that was all tied to why we initially purchased it. That is not the plan right now, but we have, so in our urban renewal plans, obviously, you know, we have projects and we can't fund things unless they're a project in the plan. But one of the things that we do when we develop a new URA plan, is we also look at all the existing city approved plans. So that's our transportation systems plan, it's our capital improvements plan, it could be our stormwater systems plan. And we look to see if there's any projects the city has approved infrastructure wise that are within that urban renewal area. And if so, we try to include those as a project so we can contribute to the funding of it, because it's already been determined at a high level that this is needed for that area. And so this is an example of that, where the Pine Street extension was a project in our plan, but it was also in the transportation systems plan that's kind of up here. So because that still shows a road going through it, if we were to hand it over to a developer and say, but we don't plan on putting the road there, that's where I'm not sure, or if we're gonna have to wait to actually officially sign it over to a developer until that's done. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is because of those environmental issues, and we've gotten all of the reports, we know exactly what you can and can't do. We literally just need a document signed that says no further action is needed on that site with respect to environmental testing or cleanup, as long as you don't do X, Y, and Z. So as long as you don't put residential on the ground floor, as long as you don't dig below the water level. So it's just sort of restrictions that we need, and it protects whoever we go to sell it to or develop the property. And so those are the things that we're getting in place. It's just, it's a little trickier sometimes than we would like it to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, one quick question is I didn't remember the environmental report. Was the pollution caused by a previous business or the railroad?
No, it was previous business use. There was multiple businesses that had caused issues. So it wasn't even just the previous one. I'd have to go back, but I think it was like 2 or 3 business worth of sort of issues. And the same issues are on the adjacent property that we don't own, which is why we've kind of been working together, I guess, in tandem over the years to do all the environmental. And even across the way, it's similar issues, and it's just because the types of businesses that were there back in, you know, the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. And in general, it's all pretty much the same. You know, you can do a lot on those sites. And again, it doesn't mean you can't do things, but it puts the onus on whoever develops it to go through those exercises to ensure safety.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the 2026 budget. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Got your budget.
You guys have your budget. And I'm gonna keep you updated on it much better than I've done in the past, so we're gonna be on that one. And I'll try to have more people coming in and sharing things on projects that are helping me now that we have a little bit more of a robust team as well. So they can get some experience, so I'll try and get that floating through as well.
And then meetings, are we coming not till April?
The next one will be, do you want me to share what's going on?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Not to. It's really quick, and it's kind of what I already alluded to. Obviously, we've had this conversation of like, at what point does the board get phased out? Once we stop collecting increment, that's where that conversation sort of starts. And we don't have a clear answer, just so everybody knows. we're sort of working in like a status quo, at least through this next fiscal year is what staff has recommended, like, hey, just let us keep working with our board, and hopefully over this next year, we can figure out what the plan is. Part of that, is there's been a lot of there's a lot of things happening with just boards and commissions at its highest level right now. I think some of you might recall, like, during our budget meeting last year, Kristen came to get your all's opinion on like potentially merging boards. There was a whole assessment, a governance assessment that was done on like every board and commission, and you know, what the future board and commission should look like and how they should operate and how they should be interacting with council or the agency. And unfortunately, I guess like all of that has been happening at the same time that we've been asking the question of like how, you know, what's the plan? How do we move this forward? Because we actually haven't had an urban renewal area that had an advisory board, because a lot of ours don't. If they're not big enough, they just don't close out. And so we don't have a set sort of like preferred process in place when it comes to our boards here. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. But at the same time, while city is trying to figure out kind of big picture, our thoughts are figure out the big picture, and then we'll hopefully be able to come in and then work through what it's going to look like. So I just wanted to make sure I touched base, because obviously there's a lot of things happening. But we're just gonna keep going status quo, and I'm gonna keep you updated. And we are asking, and I know I asked you all your opinion on this at our October meeting. But part of what we're also asking is to utilize this board as a sounding board as we're developing the North Waterfront urban renewal projects, and that's something that I'm working on as well. So more times you have to, yes. So that's kind of what's happening, but I just wanted to make sure I looped everybody in that like we're still meeting, we're still having you, we still need everyone's opinion. It's so vital to everything that we're doing, and hopefully you'll hang with us.
So we're asking, so the April meeting, we're gonna have, who's coming?
Engineering will be here to
Engineering
talk
to
about
Portland
Portland
Road.
Road.
Cool.
Yes. And then we can get an update on Silverton Road as well, because it'll be the same folks for the most
Oh.
part. Aaron Edelman will be here, and he manages the teams that are doing both the projects. And then I think he'll have one of his team members here for Portland Road specifically, but if we have questions on Silverton Road, he will be here to answer those as well, and to give an update.
Excellent. Any other updates?
So I already mentioned Silverton Road underway and the Portland Road. Then we're getting started on the industrial site readiness step for out in that area of Hyacinth. So that's all I've been listening.
No. Anybody got anything?
Thank you for your patience
Nothing
this
else.
morning. You guys are the best.
Yeah, thanks for hanging in.
Thank you.
Well, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Great,
great day.
thanks everyone.
Guys.
Bye.